is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Tonight's episode of Out in Front is brought to you by our season sponsors, Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt.
Good afternoon and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Out in Front with Battleborn Progress. My name is Will Pregman. I'm the communications director here for Battleborn Progress, and tonight I'm filling in for Shelbie Swartz, who wished she could be here tonight and is probably still watching from home. Unfortunately, he was feeling a little bit under the weather today. So I'm here back guest hosting once again with our fabulous panel this week to talk about Clean Air Month, of which May in fact is. Tonight I have a lineup of fantastic guests to talk all about Clean Air Month, what that means in the context of climate change that affects our state, both North and the South, and also how that affects natural resources. We'll get into some discussion of national monuments and also the efforts for environmental justice that are being undertaken by both our partners and ourselves in the fight to create a livable future for us here in Nevada. So welcome, and I appreciate you being here with us tonight. If you're enjoying the show, please make sure you fill in the chat with your questions, your comments, your reactions. We love to hear from folks. We ask your questions live here on the show to our fabulous guests who are happy to answer them. And also be sure that you're liking, sharing, subscribing, hitting the bell, all those things, no matter what platform you're on. It really helps us out and helps our discussion reach as many people as possible. So thank you so much again. And without further ado, we'll dive right in. To introduce my guests that I have this evening, I'm joined tonight by Alan O'Neill, the former superintendent of the Lake Mead Recreation Area and all-around friend of the show and friend of the organization. Happy to talk with him tonight. We also have Rodrigo Gonzalez, who's the community outreach organizer with Chispa Nevada, is one of our partner organizations that works on environmental issues, particularly environmental justice. We have Nick Christensen, with the Southern Nevada group, who's the Southern Nevada group chair of the Sierra Club. And we have our very own Matilda Guerrero, who is our digital manager here at Battleborn Progress, here to join us as well. And also joining Rodrigo is Annabelle Garnanos, who will be providing some translation for our friend Rodrigo. So welcome, everybody. Alan, I'm going to actually start with you because we just celebrated something very recently. It was very special, and we can't stop talking about it because it's a BFD, as former President Obama and current President Biden would say. Alan, you were part of the journey to help us honor a Vikwame National Monument, our newest national monument here in the state. And you've been doing this work longer than some of our team members have been alive. So, and that's not an insult. That's a compliment. Tell us about that effort and what it took to get that done, and the role that you see that playing in the future of Nevada's climate framework.
Well, thanks, Will. Yeah, my time goes back to this landscape. Shortly after I transferred down from Glacier National Park as superintendent there to superintendent at Lake Mead, I was one of the first trips I took around the park was across Christmas Tree Pass, and realized there was something really special about that mountain and the adjoining landscape. And although this area has great recreational ecological value, realized that we needed to bring larger focus on its importance as a cultural resource, particularly as a sacred landscape to the 10 human-speaking tribes. They're the tribes that traditionally lived along the Colorado River, and also it was important to the Southern Paiute tribes and the Hopi tribes. But for the human-speaking tribes, it's their most holy place. It's their place in which their place of creation, in which they entered into the earth plane through Spirit Mountain and will return to their heaven upon death through Spirit Mountain. So it is, their Vatican, their Mecca, whatever you want to call it. So, we were realizing, how do we bring attention to that? And there was a new category in the National Historic Preservation Act called traditional cultural properties. And that was to recognize the spiritual or sacred values in a landscape. And it's important to living communities not historically there, but still living there and using that landscape for gathering plants and things like that. So we entered into a consultation process for several years, and we actually were successful in getting this as a first traditional cultural property in Nevada, and even today one of the largest. But what we didn't get done was the associated landscape to it, which was just as important to the tribes. But because that process for the traditional cultural property was limited in scope, we couldn't add the adjoining lands. And so over the next decade or so, we were fighting really bad projects, industrial level projects in this landscape that adjoins Spirit Mountain. And, finally in 2018, we defeated the department, canceled the Crescent Peak Wind Project. And we decided that time, unless we do something, we're going to lose this landscape to industrial development. And that would have been tragic. So that's when we formed the Honor of Ikwame Coalition and started the process of getting this area designated as a national monument. And from a climate change standpoint, that action, I think, is going to prove to be a very wise decision. As I think viewers may know, we have the 30 by 30 initiative in our country. It's America the Beautiful initiative by the Biden administration, but that's a global initiative. 190 countries around the world have entered into an agreement to work toward protecting 30% of our land and ocean resources by the year 2030. Right now, we're probably around 17% of land and 10% ocean, so we have a long way to go. But from Nevada, in terms of Ikwame as a new national monument, in my opinion, that may have been one of the biggest bangs for the buck we could get in addressing climate change, primarily because it connects already protected areas on the California side and also the Boulder City Conservation Area to Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Essentially what that did was connect the Mojave Desert to the Colorado Plateau through Lake Mead. So from where you're looking at resilience in an ecosystem, so that we have the elevation gradients and the migratory corridors, the little nooks and crannies like the natural springs. This allows species, as we have changes in temperature and rainfall and such, to make adjustments across that larger landscape. So that monument, because they included some of the existing areas within Lake Mead National Recreation Area, assures that this landscape is going to be managed as an integrated whole, not just as species. So the BLM and the National Park Service and such will be looking at managing that as a total integrated ecosystem, which I think is really good news. So I'll stop at that. But in terms of a genetic reservoir, I mean, this is an incredible ecological and cultural landscape. There's like 50 different sensitive species in here. And of course, the 30 by 30 initiative is part of it is to make sure that we protect the biodiversity that we have. And certainly in southern Nevada, this is one of the richest ecological landscapes we have.
It certainly is, and we were so happy to get to work on that that amazing campaign. It really came together, and it struck me. We just had Congresswoman Dina Titus actually at the state legislature. She stopped by to do her remarks just the other day, and she gave us a shout out. You can check that out on our Twitter page. But she also talked extensively about the effort to designate Aviquame as a national monument and her work specifically behind the scenes on that. And it was just a great coming together of grassroots, grass tops, people in Nevada that wanted to see this land protected. And of course, folks from the conservation community as well, who understood the importance of it, like you just laid out. So we were really proud to be part of that. It's really exciting to have a new national monument. So, Alan, I did want to also ask you, so given what you just talked about the connectivity of the land, the importance in biodiversity, and how this helps with climate, as in your experience, you've seen the firsthand effects of climate change on our public lands over a period of time. What do you believe now is the most pressing consequences that we're facing and issues that we're facing that threaten our natural resources here in southern Nevada now?
Well, since I retired as superintendent at Lake Mead, the water's dropped 160 feet, 170 feet, but it's gained a little bit here in the last week or so. But, obviously we're seeing the absolute results of climate change. We're in the 23rd year of drought. That's an artificial body of water, but from a natural resource standpoint, I think habitat fragmentation to me is something that really concerns me, because as much as we support renewable energy developments, we have to be careful about where we place those, because if we're not smart, we're going to place those that disrupt the migratory corridors and other things which are important to sustain from a climate standpoint. So, I don't know why that we continue to people to intrude into floodplains. I mean, it used to be, well, if you're outside of a 100-year floodplain, you're okay. Now we find out with climate change that it's more like you better be outside of a 500-year floodplain. Or if you're building a home, why are we allowing homes to be built in fire-prone areas and forests? Because we're spending an enormous amount of money trying to protect structures within areas where those structures probably should not have been. So I think we really need to look at our state laws and local ordinances about land use planning, and not have human development areas that are fire prone or flood prone, or disrupt, deal with habitat fragmentation. We can do that, but I mean, we just have to be smarter in how we look at future development.
Certainly, and I know there's a lot of bills up at the legislature that are dealing with this issue. I know that there's discussions happening at the county and city levels as well on how we appropriately use land in southern Nevada and planning that out for the future. And we're going to get into that, I think, a little bit more as we talk with some of our other guests. And Alan, I appreciate you. I'm going to go actually and bring in Rodrigo and Annabelle right now to talk about what CHISPA's working on as well. Rodrigo, I wanted to welcome you to the show and then ask you, Latino communities are disproportionately impacted by air pollution and climate change. We know this from all the data. How is CHISPA Nevada working to engage the Latino community and ensure their voices are heard in the fight against climate change? And Annabelle, if you want to translate or...
Adelante, le dice Will, ¿Cómo trabaja Chispa Nevada para involucrar a las comunidades latinas y garantizar que sus voces se escuchen en la lucha por el aire limpio y la acción climática?
Primero, buenas tardes y gracias, Will, por tenerme aquí en esta importante reunión.
First of all, good afternoon, and thank you, Will, for having me at this important meeting.
Chispa escucha a la comunidad sobre sus preocupaciones sobre el medio ambiente y la empodera ejerciendo el poder de la fuerza de su voz para unir y atraer comunidades. Impulsa la concientización sobre la necesidad de cuidar nuestro medio ambiente y aumenta la participación de las comunidades locales en la gobernabilidad y la democracia para dar forma a políticas y de decisiones medioambientales críticas que afectan directamente a nuestra gente, nuestro medio ambiente y nuestro futuro.
Chispa listens to the community about their concerns about the environment and empowers them by exercising the power of the strength of their voice to unite and attract communities, raise awareness about the need to care for our environment, and increase the participation of local communities in governance and democracy to shape critical environmental policies and decisions that directly affect our people, our environment, and our future.
Chispa trabaja para convertir los valores ambientales en prioridades nacionales, estatales y locales. Chispa, en colaboración con nuestros afiliados estatales, educa al público, medios y funcionarios públicos sobre los problemas ambientales claves. Trabaja para incrementar la participación del votante en el proceso democrático y moviliza una red diversa de activistas para abogar por políticas ambientales sanas.
Chispa works to convert environmental values into national, state, and local priorities. Chispa, in collaboration with our state affiliates, educates the public, media, and public officials on key environmental issues, works to increase voter participation in the democratic process, and mobilizes a diverse network of activists to advocate for sound environmental policies.
Thank you so much for describing that. And it's true, you do work to really bring us together and lead the work on talking about how climate change impacts communities of color and those who are most affected by it. And you mentioned, too, again, the bringing together of partners. And I wanted to focus on that a little bit because we're, of course, Battleborn Progress. You also work on these issues, too. But oftentimes, Latinos aren't always given a seat at the table on these issues, especially when it comes to the legislature or the halls of power in our state. And how are organizations like Chispa, what are they doing specifically to bridge that gap and ensure that Latino communities are represented and have a seat at the table when it comes to making these decisions that affect our entire state?
Entonces, ¿cómo pueden las organizaciones similares al trabajo que está haciendo Chispa cerrar esa brecha y garantizar que las comunidades latinas tengan un asiento en la mesa sobre esos temas que nos afectan a nivel estatal?
Haciendo alianzas, tal como lo hemos hecho. Ahora mismo, en la legislatura actual y en las anteriores, nos hemos unido para impulsar propuestas de ley en la legislatura estatal que servirán para mejorar el medio ambiente, donde nuestros voluntarios tienen la oportunidad de testificar, contando sus historias y manifestar su apoyo a esas propuestas de ley.
By making alliances, just as we have done, right now in the current legislature and in the previous ones, we have come together to promote bills in the Senate legislature that will serve to improve the environment, where volunteers have the opportunity to testify by telling their stories and express their support for those bills.
Aquí en Chispa dependemos del poder de la gente para ayudarnos a crecer a un poder más fuerte y de esa manera ser capaces de pelear contra problemas climáticos y retos medioambientales en comunidades latinas y de personas de bajos ingresos y de color. Y qué mejor que unirnos a otras organizaciones similares al trabajo que estamos haciendo.
Here at Chispa, we depend on the power of the people to help us grow into a stronger power and thus be able to fight climate problems and environmental challenges in Latino, low-income, and people of color communities. And what better way than to join other organizations that are doing work similar to the work that we're doing?
Chispa cree en el poder de la comunidad como un elemento de cambio, no solo para avanzar las iniciativas de energía limpia, sino para abordar las principales injusticias medioambientales y sociales.
Chispa believes in the power of the community as a game changer, not just to advance clean energy initiatives, but to address major environmental and social injustices.
Hemos inspirado cambios mayores en los estados donde estamos activos. Nos gustaría extender este éxito aún más, para acercarnos a las personas a las que servimos y a las comunidades que protegemos. Chispa cuenta con el apoyo individual y la fuerza de la voz colectiva de nuestra comunidad y también con el poder de las alianzas para ayudarnos.
We have inspired major change in the states where we are active. We would like to extend this success even further to get closer to the people we serve and the communities we protect. Chispa relies on the support of individuals and the strength of the collective voice of our community, and also the power of alliances to help us.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. And we're going to put information in the chat and circle back in just a second after we talk to our other guests. But we really appreciate working with Chispa Nevada. We have for a long time now, and we're really excited to see what's next on the horizon as it pertains to fighting for climate action that makes our state and the communities who are most impacted by it, particularly the Latino community, more healthy and more safer. We're going to get into that as we continue in our discussion tonight. First, though, I want to go now to our third guest, which is Nick Christensen with Sierra Club. And speaking of groups that have been in the fight for climate for a long time, Sierra Club, one of the oldest organizations working on issues of clean air and such for decades. Nick, can you tell us a little bit, first of all, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about some of the organization's biggest successes in this arena, especially recently in Nevada, and what you see as the most pressing issues on the environment today?
Thank you. Well, my name is Nick Christensen. I'm the chair of the executive committee for the Southern Nevada group of the Sierra Club, which covers the area basically from around Tonopah in the state down south. We're one of 4 groups that make up the Toyabe chapter, and that's one of about 60 some odd chapters that make up the National Sierra Club. As in terms of our successes, some of the biggest successes we've had over the last couple of years is very recently helping to prevent the Southern Nevada Economic Development and Conservation Act, called SNEDCA, from going into effect in recent years, which would expand the disposal boundary, the occupied area of greater Las Vegas, by an area about the size of the city of Washington, D.C. We think that sort of sprawl would be very damaging to the area, and we're proud of our efforts to fight it. We also helped close down the Reed Gardner coal-fired power plant up in the Moapa Mesquite area. Very happy about that, and we're currently working on projects trying to limit ecological damage to the Walker Lake area. Mitigation of the after effects of Reed Gardner, and working on fighting some drying out of some wetlands in Mono County of California, which is part of our overall territory. So those are some things we're working on. I think are very important. Piggybacking on what Alan said, the Aviquame was very important because of its connectivity, and he was talking about the problems that were facing us, and one of them, chief among them, is water. Southern Nevada our concerns about water are manifold and they're very serious. He also mentioned the connectivity of our wildlands. I mean, Nevada being 80% federal land and having the highest percentage of wildlands of any of the southern, any state other than Alaska, is extraordinarily important in our part in maintaining an ecological balance in the whole country. So preserving these wildlife migration corridors is extremely important. And we, of the lower 48 states, we are in the best position to actually maintain that. And I think that's terribly important. And then combating the effects of sprawl, which have had such a devastating effect on southern Nevada. So those are the sort of three areas that I think are sort of most important right now. And of course, there are a lot of tools in the toolkit to doing that, including, as Alan mentioned, the 30 by 30 conservation efforts, which we think are extraordinarily important, and designating some more areas as national monuments. And there are a couple coming up that I think now we can turn our attention to that I think are extremely important.
Yeah, and we're going to get into those in a second. I know which ones you're referring to too. There's some recent news on that. Very exciting opportunities coming up, and I'll be excited to see what comes of that. But I then wanted to ask you, Nick. So you mentioned several priorities there, and a lot of great work Sierra Club's doing. I wanted to ask on the subject of climate change and air pollution, on how it impacts communities of color specifically, which we talked a little bit about with Rodrigo. What is Sierra Club's role in addressing some of those environmental justice issues, and what is Sierra Club's approach in that regard to fighting climate change as it affects marginalized communities?
Well, over the last many years, the Sierra Club focus has really changed, and we've come to understand that there is no environmental protection without environmental justice. And so that's become a much bigger focus of our organization. And we're so happy to and think we're most effective when we can amplify and work with our partners that are really on the front lines of these things. Partners like Chispa Nevada, who do such a wonderful job in the community, that the best thing that we can do to help those communities is to amplify the people who are working in them every single day. So we are happy to do that. Of course, the disadvantaged communities, are facing heavier traffic, more medium and heavy duty vehicles, which lead to higher concentrations of PM 2.5 and PM 10 particles that cause asthma, higher ozone rates, which cause massive air quality issues. So that's a really important thing, is to get improved air quality in these communities. We really need to decarbonize our transportation sectors.
Yeah, certainly. And transportation, I know, is one of the biggest sources of air pollution, and
the biggest in Nevada.
The biggest, actually, and it's accountable for increases in asthma and such that we see from young kids and things like that. I want to actually really quickly ask another specific question to you, Nick, before I bring in our next guest, which is what specifically at the federal level has the Biden administration been doing on climate, and what are some of those policies, and why are those exciting, or what potential do they hold for Nevada?
Well, I think the Biden administration on balance has done some very good things for the environment, although the record is largely mixed. On the downside, they started with the policy, stating the policy that they were going to stop oil and gas drilling on all federal lands, and then did not back that up. They've been improving those things, and so we're really sad about that. We're really sad about the going through with the Willow Pipeline project. We think that's a big mistake. Nonetheless, the Inflation Reduction Act has some really monstrous consequences, most of which are good, not entirely good, but by and large are very, very strong for the decarbonization efforts that we have to go through that are going to be extraordinarily consequential over the next couple of decades. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how those plan out. What we need to do as organizations on the ground is figure out how to take those policies and turn those into real actionable things that not only help our community generally, but especially help our most disadvantaged communities. How do we get heat pumps in the homes of people who, as they're looking to upgrade or replace, air conditioning products? How do we get electric cars into the garages of people who can't afford them? How do we get solar panels on the roofs of renters? And then how do we steer our transportation dollars towards a better mass transit infrastructure rather than just buying second cars for people in Summerlin and Seven Hills? So those are some real projects that we need to tackle, and it's not going to be easy, but I think those are places where we can see not only the best bang for the buck in terms of environmental impact, but also for environmental justice impact.
Awesome. And thank you for giving us that insight on what's happening at the federal level as well. Because, of course, this isn't just a state isolated issue. This is something that really affects all of us. And I'm going to actually now, first of all, thank you, Nick. I'm now going to bring in our fourth guest, who's our own Matilda Guerrero, who works with the Breathe Free Coalition, which, speaking of transportation and air quality and how that affects us here in Nevada, the Breathe Free Coalition's been doing a lot of great work, especially up in the legislative session and connecting to federal issues as well. So, Hilda, can you tell us about Breathe Free NV, what that is, and what y'all have been up to?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you so much, y'all, for having me on. And before we get into the nitty gritty, may the 4th be with you all. So I have the honor of coordinating the Breathe Free NV Coalition. Our coalition consists of some amazing grassroots organizations that work with Nevadans on a day-to-day basis. Our coalition consists of our friends at Chispa Nevada, Plan, Faith in Action Nevada, Faith Organizing Alliance, Vote Solar, and Make the Road Nevada. I think Rodrigo hit it on the nail. What's so important about organizing folks in the environmental justice space is that there needs to be a powerful grassroots and grass tops organizing. And there needs to be like a powerful strides to empower community members to take ownerships of these issues that impact them on a day-to-day basis and advocate for solutions that meet their unique priorities and needs. And I recognize that when it comes to environmental justice, there needs to be a real holistic organizing approach, because it's important that communities of color understand the impacts of environmental justice issues that impact them on a day-to-day basis. And most of the time, these issues are BIPOC folks, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, and other marginalized and underrepresented communities, just as we found in the decarbonization report, which I'm sure one of my friends will drop in the chat for you all to peruse through. By organizing at the grassroots level, we can help to level the playing field and ensure that these communities have a seat at the table. We can also create opportunities for folks to connect with one another, share their experiences, and build solidarity around shared goals. But I also think it's very important to acknowledge that grassroots organizing is only effective if it's done in a way that's welcoming and inviting for everyone. I recognize that environmental justice is a very intimidating issue, and many folks feel like they don't have the expertise or the resources to get involved. That's why our friends at the Breathe Free NV Coalition are creating this space where folks feel comfortable asking questions, sharing their perspectives, and learning from another. And we're doing this by being mindful of the language that we use, avoiding jargon and technical terms that might be honestly super confusing and exclusionary. We're also prioritizing listening and empathy and making an effort to understand where folks are coming from and what they care about. And we celebrate and uplift the diversity of the perspectives and experiences within our communities, while also recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute.
Certainly. And we have seen that really in the work that you've done on Breathe Free NV since taking that issue over. And we will drop that report in the chat, breathefreenv.com. I want to say, yes, .com. where you can find the full report, which shows you all of the data and how to see where the intersections of the impacts of climate change are affecting different communities, especially in Southern Nevada. And so you mentioned and you touched on that this is an intimidating issue for some, and it can be a hard thing to talk about with lawmakers who a lot of times, might come at things from a more dollars and cents kind of brass tacks sort of way. But it's really important to, like you said, be welcoming and communicate that these things affect different communities differently. So what has the strategy been like to engage community members from a communications perspective on the issue of environmental justice?
We hear this term a lot. It's meeting community members where they're at. But the way that we're doing this is by including a space where everyone feels welcome and honestly included in the conversations. One of the ways that we're doing this is by creating opportunities for folks to connect with one another and to share their experiences. For Earth Day, our sister organization, Institute for Progressive Nevada, hosted an amazing Earth Day roundtable where community members and other climate activists were able to come together to learn, to ask questions, and to engage in a dialogue about environmental justice and how the climate crisis is affecting every single community. We're also using social media and other digital platforms to reach folks where they are and to make information about environmental justice more accessible and most importantly, most digestible. Another key strategy that we've been using to make the issue of environmental justice more relevant and relatable to folks' life is by getting to know people on a holistic and a personal one-on-one approach, so we can get them invested and involved and build that stakeholdership, and to help them see how the climate crisis is affecting them in their household. In fact, yesterday, I asked my brother, how do you think the climate crisis is impacting you? It took him a minute to kind of think about it, and he said, you know what? We live in Las Vegas, and it's very hot. So naturally, the cost of my air conditioning price is going to go extremely high during the summertime. And we could see it in my bill that I get every month. So I know how much it's impacting me. And it's impacting me because now I'm going to have to allocate more funds into paying my high electricity bill. And naturally, this is just not accessible and not very feasible, especially for low income and underrepresented communities. We also try to connect the dots between environmental justice and issues like public health, economic opportunity, and community well-being. And we're doing this by framing the issue in a way that resonates with folks' lived experiences, and we help them break down some of the barriers to engagement and create a sense of urgency for the need of action. What I really love the most about the IPN's Earth Day Roundtable is that we had such a diverse cohort of folks on the roundtable. We had folks from the Indigenous community, from the LGBTQ plus community. We had folks from, we had our superstar volunteer, Donna West. So Donna, if you're watching, this is my special shout out to you. Just talking about their own lived experiences and just the ways that it's impacting every single community. And at the end of the day, the most important thing that we're doing is to recognize that we need to build trust and relationships with the community because it's critical to further advance that. We're striving to be transparent, accountable, and to be responsive to the needs and concerns of community members that we serve. And we're doing this by amplifying their voices and voices of the historically underserved and marginalized communities who are most impacted by these issues.
Definitely. And if you all want to check out that roundtable that Matilda referenced, you can check that out on our sister organization's page, Institute for Progressive Nevada, on Facebook. You can find that video there if you want to tune in and check it out. Thank you for that, Matilda. And my last question for you, and I'll kind of go back to the others, which is, we talked a little bit about coalition building. What, in your experience, is the most effective strategy on coalition building around environmental justice causes?
You know, I read something the other day about how the most important thing to do in a coalition space is that you bring in a cocktail of ideas and a cocktail of different approaches. Personally, for me, coming from the voting rights aspect, when I led the Let Nevada's Vote Coalition, and when I worked for the city of Henderson, and I read the Part-Time Advisory Council, I've learned that the most important aspects in coalition space is that you have to establish a shared vision and purpose at the very beginning. So at the very start, if you're starting with a clear and compelling vision that everyone can rally around, and it's super essential for building a strong coalition, that means it takes time to listen to different perspectives, and then at the end, identify common goals that everyone can get behind. Most importantly, it's all about cultivating trust and relationships. Honestly, this is the bread and butter of every single thing, even if it's not like community organizing. It's pivotal at every special aspect. This means like being transparent, holding yourself accountable, and being responsive to the needs and concerns of folks. And it also means seeking out and amplifying the voices of those who are most impacted by environmental injustices. There also needs to be a very, very strong sense of collaboration and embedded culture. It's honestly, collaboration is the most important part, because you have to be open to someone else's perspectives, and you have to value everyone's contribution, because this is how you build stakeholdership. This is how you build value, and this is how folks feel vested and empowered to continue participating. Something that I used to tell folks all the time, especially when I worked for the city of Henderson for PTAC, was that I have ideas, but if your idea is better than mine, then tell me, so then we can go do those things, because I don't ever want to feel stagnant because one person is making all the choices. And most importantly, to get this done, we have to continue mobilizing the community. We're working for community members and only for community members. So we have to make sure that we're fighting tooth and nail for them and doing whatever it takes to amplify their voices and ensure that they're being heard. And most importantly, just to cut it dry to summarize all of that, it's literally just by working together to create a more just and sustainable future. And that's honestly what it is. It's just having that shared vision and having that shared interest, and knowing that I'm doing this for this reason, and this is why I'm doing this.
Certainly. And thank you for that insight, Matilda. And also, you did mention cocktails, which I think doesn't hurt either. And also making it digestible. So making sure people are fed as well. So these are all great tips. Thank you so much, Matilda. I'm going to bring it back up to Alan and change the subject just a little bit to the subject of outdoor recreation. So we talked a little bit about the threats to our natural resources and how they impact our health, but also outdoor recreation is part of our health too. It's exercise, it's mental health. During the pandemic, there was a renewed interest in outdoor recreation, and more people went hiking or went outdoors because there was lack of anything else to do. But now they've really had a chance to fall in love with our public lands. How do we balance the need for outdoor recreation to support our economy and also just for the fun of it, and the imperative to make sure that these places are maintained and that our natural resources aren't destroyed?
Good question. We did see an uptick. There's no question about it. What we also saw is that many of those users were not really educated on how to use the public land. So we did see increase in litter and some vandalism and other issues and such. So, I think we need a strong education effort. The Leave No Trace is something that people have grown a little more accustomed to, but not the new users and such. So, we've changed how we've used these parks too. I've been around here a long time, and every time we have people from, say, out of the state and they want to go see something, it seems like we send them to the same places. We'll take the Red Rock Scenic Loop, beautiful. The Mount Charleston Loop, beautiful. Great experience. But if we keep sending all the people to the same places, then we're going to get crowding. I did my own little work, a draft book that highlights 80 hidden gems and a several-hour drive of Las Vegas, some places that are unbelievable. So spreading out that use a little bit, letting people to know the diversity of the outdoor environments that we have in southern Nevada. It's unbelievable. When I've been out and explored these areas, I was surprised to find the incredible diversity of what I call the hidden gems. But also in places like Zion, if people went to Zion a decade ago or whatever, and had to put up with the crowds along the river drive out to the end of the road and the canyon there, it was not a great experience. So many people, cars honking horns, people slamming doors, and you couldn't find a parking place when you got to the end, and it was not a high quality experience. And so when Zion introduced a shuttle system, that was a little bit of a change for people. I don't want to take a shuttle bus, but now if you go up to Zion now and take a shuttle bus during the peak season, it's a much higher quality experience. The same thing happened in Grand Canyon on the West Rim Drive and shuttle system. So I think we'll see new innovations on how people can use the parks to avoid some of the crowding. But it's going to be an issue, and we have a pretty serious issue with a number of people on the front lines on our land managing agencies. We are really tight. I mean, it's nice establishing new areas and such, but we got to remember that we need people that can steward those lands, both the paid staff for the governmental agencies and their partners. So enhancing the partnerships and the collaboration and such are going to be critically important in the future.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask you, Alan, too, what has, aside from designating a vehicle may, of course, what else is the Biden administration doing on the front of climate that you find exciting or impressive that affects Nevada here as well?
Well, I think Nick talked on some of them. I haven't followed as close as some, but I'm a real advocate of the 30 by 30 initiative, because I think that's really important. And Nick said that Nevada plays kind of a really strong role because of the amount of public lands in it. But when we look at how we put projects or proposals together in the future, I think it's really going to be important to have areas that actually connect to other areas, so that we create that little bit larger platform or landscape on which the movement can take place in wildlife and such. So, I've been a real strong proponent of that initiative. If we can get to that point of protecting 30% of our land and 30% of our oceans for the U.S., that's going to be a heck of an accomplishment. And when we think we have 190 countries now that are signatory to that same 30 by 30 commitment, that could go a long way if we can really push that forward. And that's one of the reasons why I was excited for VICWMA, because that clearly addresses that need.
Thank you for that, Alan, and we appreciate your thoughts on that. I'm going to come to Rodrigo and Annabelle back again. My question for you, Rodrigo, is that environmental issues sometimes can feel disconnected from everyday people's lives and concerns, especially in the Latino community. How or what strategies are you using to engage the Latino community on the fight for a cleaner and healthier future?
Y entonces, ahí está the environment. Los problemas ambientales a menudo pueden parecer desconectados de la vida y las pasiones diarias de las comunidades latinas. ¿Cómo podemos comunicar de manera efectiva los impactos del cambio climático y la contaminación del aire en las comunidades latinas?
Bueno, la comunidad latina tiene sus preocupaciones diarias. el trabajo, la escuela de sus hijos, las labores del hogar, etcétera. Pero los problemas ambientales los tienen como una prioridad principal. Hemos hablado directamente con la comunidad, haciendo reuniones comunitarias donde explicamos ampliamente los impactos del cambio climático y la contaminación del aire en las comunidades latinas.
The Latino community has its daily concerns, work, their children's school, housework, etc., but environmental problems are a main priority. We have spoken directly with the community, holding community meetings where we extensively explain the impacts of climate change and air pollution on Latino communities.
Todos merecemos el derecho a respirar aire limpio. Es algo en lo que enfatizamos, el derecho a respirar un aire limpio. Les hacemos saber que las comunidades de color tienen un 65% más de probabilidades de vivir en un condado con aire insalubre, a la exposición constante a la contaminación y a las toxinas en el trabajo, en las escuelas y en nuestros hogares, que están empeorando la salud de nuestras comunidades y nuestro planeta.
We all deserve the right to breathe clean air. It's something we emphasize, the right to breathe clean air. You should know that communities of color are 61% more likely to live in a county with unsanitary air, constant exposure to pollution and toxins at work, in schools, and in our homes, which are making the health of our communities and our planet worse.
Hemos exhortado a nuestra comunidad a luchar contra décadas de racismo ambiental, a influir en los legisladores y presionar a los contaminadores para que protejan el derecho de nuestras comunidades al aire limpio.
We have called on our community to fight decades of environmental racism, influence lawmakers, and pressure polluters to protect our community's right to clean air.
Chispa es un programa creado por la Liga de Votantes por la Conservación, LCV, con el único objetivo de mejorar y crear entornos más saludables en las comunidades latinas y comunidades de personas de color. Estas comunidades se ven afectadas de manera desproporcionada por políticas ambientales deficientes. Defendemos el derecho de las personas al aire limpio, al agua limpia, a la energía limpia y a un medio ambiente saludable del que puedan estar orgullosos.
PST is a program created by the League of Conservation Voters, LCV, with the sole objective of improving and creating healthier environments in Latino communities and communities of people of color. These communities are disproportionately affected by poor environmental policies. We stand up for people's right to clean air, clean water, clean energy, and a healthy environment they can be proud of.
Es un error común que los latinos están demasiado ocupados, preocupándose por otras cosas, como para pensar en el medio ambiente. Los latinos en realidad están más preocupados que otras comunidades por la salud de nuestro medio ambiente y la sustentabilidad de nuestro planeta para las generaciones futuras. Somos conservacionistas naturales en la forma en que reutilizamos y reciclamos. Queremos ver la acción climática de nuestros funcionarios electos.
It's a common misconception that Latinos are too busy worrying about other things to think about the environment. Latinos are actually more concerned than our communities about the health of our environment and the sustainability of our planet for future generations. We are natural conservationists in the way we reuse and recycle. We want to see climate action from our elected officials.
Thank you so much for diving into that, Rodrigo. And it's true that people care more about this stuff than you take for granted. And I did want to ask Rodrigo as well. I know this wasn't one of our prepared questions, but what are some policies from the Biden administration or at the federal level that you all are paying attention to and working on at Chispa?
Y entonces sé que eso no es parte de las preguntas que usted preparó, pero ¿cuáles son algunas políticas de la administración de Biden o federal en la que están trabajando en Chispa?
Bueno, de hecho nosotros también estamos más que impulsar, aprovechando las últimas leyes que se han aprobado a nivel federal. Y de esas leyes deriva precisamente algo que podría comentar más adelante, deriva los recursos que se asignaron a EPA para reemplazar los autobuses escolares que usan diésel por autobuses eléctricos. De hecho, estamos aprovechando más que nada en el último año todas las propuestas de ley y que fueron aprobadas en el Congreso.
Yes, well, actually, I'm not necessarily really focusing on the bills, but some of the things that have derived from the laws that have passed were the resources assigned from EPA to replace diesel school buses for electric ones. And so that was something that was a result from the laws that were passed by Congress.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And I apologize for the curveball there, but wanted to make sure we discussed some of those policies tonight. Thank you for that, Rodrigo. We're up against the hour, but I did want to take a couple of questions from the chat for our panel tonight. Specifically, I wanted to bring in Alan on this, which is what do you see as the next big conservation fight in Nevada, specifically on designating new national monuments I know we just got done with one national monument, but there's a couple more we're discussing now, and there's been a little bit of press about this with the senators speaking out this, and Nick, I'll probably bring you on this as well in a little bit, but Alan, what's your take on the next conservation fight here in Southern Nevada, or in Nevada in general?
Well, we have several national monuments that people are interested in moving forward. One is the Swamp Cedars up in the north area, up more closer and associated with Great Basin National Park. The other is the East Las Vegas National Monument. Now, that's the Rainbow Gardens, Sunrise Mountain area, and Gypsum Cave. And that's an interesting one because people have had interest in trying to find a way to protect that. Some people call it the Red Rock Canyon of the East. It's a bookend. You got Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area on the west, and this might be on the east. It is an incredible resource. It's a beautiful area. It does connect to Lake Mead National Recreation Area, so there's a connectivity issue that could be important in terms of climate issue as well. But there are two that I think you'll see some movement on this next year, and yeah.
Yeah, and Nick, what's your kind of take on that too? I know we're looking at Swamp Cedars in East Las Vegas as well. There's some media on that recently. What do you think of the next frontier on that?
Well, there are loads of places in Nevada that are deserving of protection as national monuments, but I completely agree with Alan that those have to be the top two right now. I'm hoping that we can keep a big chunk of the coalition that helped bring Aviquame together so that we can keep the momentum up on these wonderful places. I mean, earlier Alan mentioned, I believe his term was traditional cultural properties as a rubric for designation of spaces, and nothing qualifies more for this than the Swamp Cedars do. Mm-hmm. I think it's an absolutely fantastic, a piece of cultural heritage for the indigenous Nevadans, and it should absolutely be protected. And in addition to the Rainbow Gardens area, you've got the Rainbow Gardens, you've got Gypsum Cave, you've also got the Great Unconformity there, one of the most geologically significant areas in all of North America. So these deserve to be protected, and the Swamp Cedars were under threat just a few years ago from a potential wind farm that wanted to go there. And the Snedka bill, the last map that I saw, has housing coming right up to the edge of the current Rainbow Gardens area. So these areas absolutely do need our active protection now. And I hope people can push the momentum forward to get these designated sooner rather than later, or at least get them in the public eye as places that need protecting.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I do now want to give, first of all, thank you, everybody who joined our show tonight. Going to give everybody the last word here in just a second. I'm going to go in reverse order. So I'm actually going to go to Matilda first. And Matilda, I actually do have a question from the chat for you to answer along with your final word of how to get in touch and help join the work that you're doing, but also you specifically could answer the question of what does Haku think of the climate crisis?
So I'm laughing because Haku is the kitty cat in this corner right here. I assume what Haku thinks about the climate crisis is that he hates it because his brother Katsu has asthma. And we all know the impacts of asthma on people. So can you only imagine if it's a cat? I know how much Haku, which is actually coincidental because Katsu had an asthma attack this morning. So we use one of these things with an inhaler at the end, and you're basically like, this is not the cat, but like you're putting the nose on there, and you have to like spray it, and it's scary. So I assume what he thinks about the climate crisis is that there needs to be some robust action to address asthma and how the climate crisis is drastically affecting not just people, but our animals too. And I'm sure that he is going to be fighting. You're going to hear him at the legislature give his best testimony in CAT about how we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promote clean air. So that way his brother can spend all year round without having one of these, and so that way he can go out on his morning walks and not have an asthma attack, and so he can stay inside and be an indoor kitty full time without having to go out on walks. And the last thing that I have to remind everybody is remember that these issues affect you on a day-to-day basis. Our friends at the Breathe Free NV Coalition are going to be doing a lot of great things to continue mobilizing folks. I know that shortly we're going to be putting out this amazing thing, and we're going to be telling the Biden administration that it's time to hit the mats. I'm going to leave you all in suspense there so you can peep out for our emails. So be sure to subscribe to IPN's email list, and that way you'll be able to be on the inside joke. And don't forget to check out breathefreenv.com for the decarbonization report. It's pretty good measures in there, and you can get up to date to see what we're doing.
Thank you, Matilda. Next, I'm going to go to Nick. Nick, tell us how we can follow along with you and the work you're doing at Sierra Club and how people can get involved.
So, yeah, I mean, one of the questions I saw in the chat was, asking about Sierra Club being a volunteer-led organization, and it's especially true in Nevada right now. We've got no national staff in the state at this moment working with our chapter and group at the group level. So it's all volunteers doing our work, and we need help. And anybody who is interested in coming and helping out, absolutely get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us through our webpage. Basically, type in Sierra Club Las Vegas in a web browser in the search section, and it will take you right to our homepage. It's a lot easier than going through the listing of the chapter and group. Reach out to us on social media. It's Sierra Club SNG or Sierra Club Las Vegas or Sierra Club Southern Nevada Group. Those sort of search terms will take you right to us, and that's really the best way to start to get involved. Reach out to us and let us know what you're interested in working in, and we definitely need as much additional help as we can get.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. Next up, Rodrigo and Annabelle, thank you so much for joining us. How do we get in touch with Chispa and follow up and get involved with the work you're doing?
Sí, entonces, ¿cómo es que nos comunicamos con Chispa y cómo podemos hacer seguimiento del trabajo que ustedes están haciendo?
Sí, nada más rapidito, Will. Hace un rato mencioné acerca de lo que estamos nosotros aprovechando acerca de las últimas leyes aprobadas a nivel federal. Nosotros llegamos aquí con una campaña que se llamó Clean Bases for Healthy Niños, y esto es un esfuerzo de varios estados para influenciar a gobernadores, juntas escolares y líderes locales para trabajar en pro de un medio ambiente más limpio. Toda esta presión en varios estados, incluyendo Nevada, sirvió pues para que precisamente a nivel nacional también estén preocupados por reemplazar los autobuses escolares en todo el país. Entonces, Nevada, el distrito escolar del condado de Clark ya logró adquirir 2 autobuses escolares eléctricos y además EPA estableció fondos para que todo el país empiece a reemplazar los autobuses escolares diésel por autobuses eléctricos. El distrito escolar del condado de Clark recibirá $10 millones que servirán para adquirir 25 autobuses eléctricos y construir la infraestructura que se requiere. Pues la gente se puede involucrar con nosotros. Estamos en todas las redes sociales, en Facebook, Instagram y Twitter.
Yes, well, first I want to go back to the question you asked about the federal laws. Chispa was involved in a campaign called Clean Buses for Healthy Niños, and it was a multi-state effort. And because of that, we influenced the entire country to kind of replace diesel school buses for electric school buses. And so the Clark County School District was able to get 2 electric school buses. In addition, EPA established funds so that the entire country can begin to replace diesel school buses with electric buses. CCSD will receive $10 million that will be used to acquire 25 electric buses and build the infrastructure that requires. And in terms of keeping track of us, we have our platforms on all the social networks, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for following up on that question too. And thank you for all your work on the Clean Buses campaign. We were so excited to see all that work coming together. And then last but not least, Alan, can you let us know how do we get in touch and get involved in the work that you're doing? I think you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, obviously, Nick hit it on the head. I mean, a lot of the work that's going to take place in terms of building collaborative partnerships is through volunteer efforts. So I really encourage everyone out there who has any interest at all in volunteering to look at the volunteering opportunities by organizations like the Sierra Club, like the Friends of Nevada Wilderness, like the Friends of Sloan Canyon, Friends of Walking Box Ranch. These type of organizations are all volunteer-led. They're fun to be involved in because you're involved in stewardship projects, and it's really a lot of fun. You feel engaged. You feel like you're empowered to get some things done. So also want to point out, you had asked about the administration thing. I think the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act and the America Great Outdoors Act are 3 incredible pieces of legislation that can help us here in Nevada. I'm thinking of the issue at Lake Mead, since I spent 13 years there as a superintendent, realizing, there are 9 boat launching ramps and 6 marinas on Lake Mead. When I was there, now there's 1 boat launching ramp and 1 combined marina. So there's a real issue about where that money can come from to build an infrastructure that can adjust to whatever level we think is one we want to plan for. So, the Park Service did not have the money to make those improvements. So having an opportunity to compete for infrastructure money and Inflation Reduction Act, because of the impacts of climate change, are pretty obvious of what happened at Lake Mead and why those facilities are closed. So being able to tap into that. And also the Great American Outdoor Act gives an opportunity for some of the other federal land managing agencies to make improvements to their facilities. I mean, we're living in a city that the facilities and the resorts are state of the art. We go out to the public lands and we have restrooms which are overused and built 20 years ago and not accommodating today's users. So being able to tap into some dollars to make real improvements on the facilities out on public lands are going to be important.
Perfect. And thank you for that. And with that, that is our show for the evening. Thank you folks so much for your joining us tonight. And thank you everyone at home for viewing, and special thank you to Annabelle for translating tonight. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you, and catch us next week, Thursday at 5 for more Out in Front. Thanks, everybody, and see you next week.